Everyone, thanks for joining in. So welcome to another exciting session of SAP Success Factors. So we have started with architectural leading practices in one of the previous sessions, right? So what we are going to do today, so I'll just break it how actually the mentoring works. The mentoring part works in Success Factor. Basically, I have divided everything into a very well structured system. So that is, we have a total 17 tracks. The track one starts with a process, right? So when I say process, again, we will be going detail about what are the modules we're talking about. Then we do have a track two, strategy and architecture. Track three, all about the operations modules, operations part of the SAP SuccessFactors operation tracks. We generally cover there how to do all those things, right? Mostly the DIY specific, right? I know you must have seen the job 8 people who are already working in SuccessFactors, right? And when it comes to implementation, which is the core part, where exactly we do have the entire IDP series as well as your implementation guide, and we will go deep dive into those topics and all. And migration, integration, QA, these things, these are the just to for you to understand. This is how a typical structure, 17 tracks I cover in my mentoring and coaching sessions, right? And if you have not taken the subscriptions and all, I will highly recommend, if you are an MBA HR student or if you are an HR, if you are planning to navigate to HR technology products like SAP SuccessFactors and all. So you always should have this subscriptions, which is again, you can go to SuccessLabsAcademy.com, and from that you can pick and choose whatever is relevant for you. So you just like it is a school.successlabsacademy.com. And from that, you can see there are a lot of options are available. We do have all the memberships and all. So you just have a look into it and let me know if you are resonate with this, and we can connect one-on-one, right? So now coming to our today's sessions. Today is actually I was focusing on the architectural leading practices. So it is a part of my second track. If you see here in the track number 2, where I cover your typically track number 2, that is the architectural leading practices, right? So here in the strategy and architecture piece, I cover the ALP series. So this is your nothing but your, so we will be today making the notes on this. So in the ALP series for EC, for employee central point of view, what are the things are there? And we do have also here the episode 1 is already live in my system. You can also watch the same episode. If you missed it out, you can watch them in the YouTube. So it is already there in the YouTube channel. You can see that here in the last episode, we covered all about the organization structure, but it was more focused on the SAP SuccessFactors, right? So if you have missed this session, I will just put the URL in the chat, and you can take this is also, it will be available in the, if you're watching it from the YouTube, it will be available once this streaming is over. You'll be getting the link in the YouTube as well. Now coming to let's move on to the topic. So what in the architectural leading practices, why we need it? Suppose you might be having a question, right? So why we need a ALP guides or architectural leading practices in any organizations, right? So the idea is, let's say you are preparing a building, you are actually think from a typical build, you're making a building, but how, if you do not think the structure in the advance, definitely what will happen? Basically, some of the things you cannot change after it is made it, right? So let's say your kitchen is over, kitchen part is done, but you have planned for a chimney there or something, something you have planned, but it is already made. Maybe you have to break again, you have to, but it again involves a cost, right? So from that point of view, if you think from a software point of view, also as an enterprise architect or an architect point of view, if you think, so you have to think in advance, right? So for the reason, actually, many of the organizations, they follow different structure, different framework, and also being an enterprise architect, also if you're aspiring for one, then I will definitely recommend there is a certification for that. It's not a SAP specific certification, but it's called a TOGAP, right? And those details you can recommend, and you can find it out in the TOGAP certification portfolio by Open Group. And maybe I will be conducting a separate session for this. I'm an active member in this forum as well, and all those details you'll be finding here. Nowadays, there's a TOGAP 10, that's the latest version, and it is again a technology agnostic. Whether you will be working for SAP or Workday or Oracle or Salesforce, what doesn't matter, but you have to just take up. This is an industry agnostic, product agnostic module, and you can go for it, right? So now coming back to our success factor track, let's move on to our ELP guide, what exactly we're trying to discuss today. Then move on to, in the episode 1, actually it was covered related to your organization structure related stuff. Okay, so today we'll be focusing on the instance strategy. So today's topic, so first episode, it was all about the org structure. So I will just mention it for your information. Organization structure. In the episode 2, what we are today covering. So today we are going to understand episode number 2. We will be trying to cover the instance strategy. Yes. So if I say here, so in the instance strategy, let me a little bit expand it. People who are very new, you understand that it is a concept of instance and provisioning. Too simple. Instance is nothing but your front end, and provisioning is your back end, right? So that is a core concept. People who are new to SuccessFactors, back end is known as your provisioning, and your front end is known as your instance. Okay. And today, on today's date, as we speak, a lot of configuration has moved to instance nowadays. Okay, previously when I started my career in SuccessFactors long back. So here, in those period of time, a lot of configurations were there in the provisioning, a lot of things, but nowadays almost everything has moved to your front end, that is your instance, right? So now we will try to understand, when I say instance strategy, what are the architect, what are the things you have to consider? Even if you're a project manager or as a consultant, you have to also be aware of all the things. So we'll not be reinventing the wheel. We'll be going to directly to the SAP official documentations, what SAP suggests. Then we will try to have our own reflections from that. And I also recommend, after watching this video or whenever you are watching this video, make a note of all these things. Keep your pen and paper ready with you, and also make the notes simultaneously as I do. Okay. So generally, if you go to the ALP guides, ALP series guide, right, you will be finding basically your in this guide, you will be finding a section. So I will not be going to the already have discussed what are all these things. I will directly go to the jump to the points, right? What are the things you would consider whenever you are going for your instance strategy? So there are a few terminologies which you might be aware of. People who are new, it is for them, right? We have to understand 4 things. There are a lot of terminologies it will be involved, right? And this is again not very specific to SuccessFactors. These are again common across whether you are working any cloud product, whether it is a Google Cloud product or is a Microsoft Cloud product, whether it is anything. So it is again a very common thing for across products, right? So you will be having, whenever you try to understand, again, I will not be going detail about it, but I will just have a cover of that. So there are a few terminologies you have to understand. A data center. So data center, what is a data center? Is basically a physical location or where the success your server is lying, and where the server, your cloud application is hosted inside actually. Okay. So again, here we do have, it is specifically driven by the geographical location or headquarters of the customer. Depends. Actually, if you are having a project in Amsterdam or Netherlands, or you're specifically London, based on the nearest data center, generally people prefer the clients actually. So if you see, they are also known as a DC04, DC02. There are so many things, the list of data centers. Maybe I will be covering some other times. But today, from that point of view, to understand, from a data center point of view, it is just a physical location of the server or where SuccessFactors cloud application is hosted. Whether it is, again, you might be having a question, is it only SuccessFactors SAP provides? The answer is no. So nowadays, Microsoft will also come up with their data server. In their data server also, we can also host our SuccessFactors applications, right? So they have started with the collaboration, the partnership and all. So because these are the big cloud players, right? So you will be having Microsoft, Google, and AWS and all. So nowadays, this is also known as a hyperscaler, right? The exact term is hyperscaler. So you will be knowing that those people also, those products also, they have now collaboration, and we can also host. Basically, I have, from my knowledge, Microsoft has already started, right? The other things, we need to check it out. Next is coming to environment. So environment, what is an environment? It is a kind of a set of servers which is hosting your various SuccessFactors cloud application in the specific data center. So before we go there, we will just make a note of it in our also in the mind map, so that it will be easy for you to note map your note making style also. Okay, so let's go to the what we understood from the few terminologies we understood, right? The terminologies. which you might be knowing it, but let's see it is again, then it will be a recap or a crash course for you. So first terminology what you understood is data center, right? So data center is again we have discussed, it's a physical location for your SuccessFactors server, basically. And in the data center, it also then we understood the environment. Next terminology is environment. So in environment again, it is a kind of when I say environment, it can be a combination or set of server hosting various SuccessFactors and HR cloud application in a data center. So that is the key definition of your environment. So you should not get confused that environment is it an instance or is it a tenant? It is a preview. So basically the answer is you have to understand from holistically what does it mean. So each data center, when I say data center, we already talked about, right? So each data center, whenever you are, let's say we are having a data center in Arizona, right, in USA. So definitely the environment will be having two types of environment. The data center will be having two types of environment. One will be a preview, which is also known as a test environment. And second one is a production environment or a productive environment, which is more stable and which is live environment, where exactly your day-to-day business, real life data, live data will be there for day-to-day business operations, right? So that is something we also known as a live instance or a productive environment also, right? So that is something you have to understand very carefully. So I will just keep a from note making point of view. So you have to understand data center is a physical location of a server or servers, right? So that we will be capturing here. Right? So that's nothing but your physical location of the server, right? So now coming to your environment. So coming to your environment, we do have like this set of servers hosting SuccessFactors applications in a data center, right? That will be a definition. Putting in a mind map, and this mind map will be shared with you. If you watch attend my webinar till the end, you will be getting that mind map. It will be handy for you for the preparation, whether it is interview preparation or your understanding overall summary of it. Now coming to the environment, as I say that it is two types actually. So a data center will be having two types of environment. One is your preview and another production. Preview. Second is a production. So we typically work in two instance strategy, two type of environment. Mostly preview is nothing but it's kind of a test for testing purpose, or we also known as a test and quality, and production is a live, the alternative name you can say, the live environment, right? Then now coming to here. So, so one of the key things to also understand, whenever we are having a release, the release update, we can get a 30 days window before it is going for live in the live instance or production instance. We'll be getting that before 30 days before the annual release. We have two releases every year, 1H and 2H, and every year. So for every releases, your actual things comes into all the configuration changes and everything comes into the preview instance first for the 30 days. Then it goes to the production. Once if any issues reported by any clients and all, generally in that 30 days window, it gets tested by all the customers across the globe. And if anything major reported, then SAP tries to fix it and resolve it during that 30 days window, so that there will be no issues during the production go live, right? So this is what we call it as an environment. So now coming to the next term is an instance, right? Which is what we are talking about today's session, instance strategy, right? Instance and tenant. Okay, so we use this term more often. Okay, and refer to a single database schema of a platform, the product type. For example, HXM core, human experience management, BizX, or LMS, or whatever you say. Each instance, when provisioned for a specific customer, is assigned a unique identifier called company ID. Okay, so you might be having a question. There are so many preview or production environment. So how do you identify which is for which client? So basically, whenever you are buying the license, okay, so what happens? Your instance or tenant, whatever you call it, right? Your company will be having a single DB schema. Okay, we call it a database schema. So whenever you will be talking about an instance, right? So let's go to the next term called instance. It will be unique to a client. So you will be having a unique DB schema or a database schema, you can call it, for a specific client. Okay. So here we will be having a specific scenario, specific DB schema for a specific client. And what happens whenever you're buying a license of any of SuccessFactors product, right? You'll be getting a company ID. So your company ID will be unique, right? So you'll be having a different company ID for different clients and all, right? So you'll be having a company ID through that. You'll be able to understand which is a unique one. And in client, actually, so you'll be getting a company ID, which is unique identifier for a specific customer, which is now known as an instance, right? This is an instance wallet. Now, next is a client. What is a client? So basically, it is referred to the context of EC payroll or legacy ERP payroll instance, right? A client is a partition within an instance, right? So generally, whenever in the previously, whenever even I have worked on the SAP HCM for the close to 6 years, so from 2010 to 2016, right? So at that point of time, we had also concept this. Now it is an EC payroll. Now we have, as we speak in 2023. So we do have EC payroll, but still the payroll engine is still lying in the on-premise, right? We do not have a 100% cloud payroll as we speak. But whenever I say that this kind of a payroll, right, we have the EC payroll system, right? In the legacy ERP payroll instances, right? We do have a concept of a client, and actually it is a part of within an instance, right? We do not get confused so much, but it is something we call it the client. So it was you might have heard about 100, 200, 800 client and all those numbers and all, you might have heard about it, right? So that is a nothing. It's now a partition, you can say, as we go through the strategy document. Your basically says that it's a partition within an instance, right? There's something that partition within an instance. We have to understand that. Now coming to the next one, going to the next terminologies. Okay. So now, as we understood that from a SuccessFactors point of view, I will not be going through in details about this documentation. Otherwise, it will take 3-4 hours to understand this document, right? I'll just having an overview. So as I say that SuccessFactors standard instance, also we have provisioning. Provisioning is nothing but, as I say, it is the backend, right? So all products come in an instance in a preview environment and a tenant in the production environment. Okay, so whatever the products you are picking up in SuccessFactors, they come up, okay, with an instance, one in preview, one in the or production, right? Maybe you need 2 instance strategy. Say EC, suppose I'm talking about EC. So EC is provisioned, let's say, into 3 instances. What will be the 3 instances? So generally, it will be like non-production, production. Production, as I say, that is your production live environment. You have to put in the production instance will be put in the production environment. Similarly, your non-production instance, right? So here we have a concept again, right? So non-production instance in a productive environment recommended whenever you are doing any kind of a QA activity, quality assurance or user acceptance testing, if you are doing it, right? At that point of time, you will need it a non-production instance in the productive environment. Otherwise, it is not needed, right? So again, whenever you are having non-production instance in a preview environment, it is recommended using for the development. Because you might have heard in the on-premise days, we have a 3-tier system: development, quality, and production. Whatever you are doing in the development, so once the configuration is done, the development part is done, it will be moving to your quality QA system, and the QA system, your tester or all the clients, they will be doing the testing and all. Then once they're satisfied, it is fulfilling all the requirements, they will be moving to the production environment, right? So that's the kind of a structure we do, a 3-tier structure. But here in the SuccessFactors point of view, if you think about it, we have a 3-instance strategy. 2-instance strategy in non-production and production. Non-production, again, to kind of a link to a 2 environment. Non-production can go to a productive environment or a preview environment. And when to use it, I will be again just capturing also in the mind, so that it will be very easy for you from a EC point of view if I think about it. Okay, so here we have to summarize. So in the instance, we do have 2 types. Again, So we will be having, you can call it preview production, there's no harm, but it is a more from a standard point of view to think about it. One is we can call it a non-production instance, or we can say that it is actually for referring to non-production instance and production instance. They are referring here. Non-production instance. Second one is a production instance, right? Production instance. And once we go here in the non-production instance, non-production instance, again, it can be used for two purposes, right? So you have seen that here, the document says non-production instance, it can be used and to environment. So now you'll be understanding the difference between your instance and environment actually. So I will be highlighting here so that it will be easy for you to navigate. Make it a color instance. Then we do have environment. So I will make it a color again, environment. So in this instance, in the non-production instance, so you have to remember, I'm talking about non-production instance and production instance. So the non-production instance, it can have two types of environment, again depends. So one can be your specifically non-production instance you will be having a typically productive environment. One is a preview environment. Okay. Suppose if I go here, productive and non-production instance, you can just do not get confused with the terminology. Non-production instance in a productive environment, another non-productive environment, production environment rather. Productive, they call it also, productive and preview. Productive environment. Then we do have preview environment. So we have already talked about it earlier, right? So where to use what? During your testing. So I will just having a similar color so that you will not be getting confused here. So environment, we are using saffron color. Just make it saffron again. And preview also, let me make it a saffron. Yes. So we see there that this instance, two types, non-production and production instance. And non-production instance we are seeing here, we do have productive environment and preview environment. We can use it. And the productive environment, in what scenario will be using non-production instance in a productive environment? It is primarily for your QA, quality assurance, or basically UAT. Okay. So this is also covered whenever I'll be going for a track number. I do not remember the name, so but it is in my plan. Whenever we'll be going for a typical track number 17, right? Already we have it. It's not 17, it is a track number 7, right? So it's quality assurance part, right? Whenever we'll be doing any kind of testing activities, I will be covering that track number 7. So here we will be going through the all details, starting from test strategy. There is also test strategy documentation from SAP. We will be going through that once. So then once it is done, so let me go to the mind map once again. So that will be covering there. So all of the QA activities will be happening in the productive environment. And in the preview environment, what will happen? So basically, non-production instance preview environment, it is for the development. Any kind of you're doing any configurations and all, you can do that, right? So it is for development. I will mention as a config, or you can say dev. Right. So hope it is clear. If you have any question, you can put in the chat, or if you're watching in the YouTube, you can live, then you can also put in your comment, right? So if you're watching the recorded session of it, then definitely you can ask in the community section, you can answer, I'll be able to answer. So how to go to the community? You have to just go to the wherever you're watching in the SuccessLabs Academy, you have to go there in the community section, you can ask the questions and pertaining to this particular video, right? And I will be more than happy to answer that. You simply have to go to that specific module. Let's say we're talking about ALP guide for specific to Employee Central. Then you go there and you can ask your question directly from here, write something, and I'll be answering there, right? So now coming to our guide. So we have seen that non-production instance can go to two different environments. Do not get confused. Again, instance and environment, right? Very small, tweak, small change things, but you have to understand very carefully, right? So recommended using for QA and development, and for non-production instance in the preview environment, it is recommended. So in your for develop any kind of a development activities you are doing, it will be utilized there. So you have to understand these three scenarios, all the three scenarios, to be successful, to have a better understanding and all. Maybe you can also make a note of it. Anyway, you'll be getting the mind map, okay, whenever we complete this webinar till the end. So next one is production instance. Very simple scenario. Production instance and productive environment. Nothing, not a rocket science here, right? You have to always understand this as well. So production instance and a productive. So I'll just make a note of it again. Very simple, straightforward thing. So very simple. We have to make it a production instance in the productive environment. It is straightforward, nothing difficult to understand as such, right? So now let's move on. I hope it is clear. Do not get confused between the difference between instance, tenant, and environment. I hope you are now able to understand. People who are very new to SuccessFactors, it is for them. People who are veteran, no worries. I know you understand all the things, right? But it can be a small recap for you. So instance we talked about. Then let me color it also so that you not be getting confused. Production instance, non-production instance. So you have to always use the right term. I have seen people use the different terminology, but it is a standard terminology even in SAP SuccessFactors across the documentation they use it. Instance, environment. Do not get confused too much, right? So now with this, we will just make a. I will just make it minimize it so that you will not be getting confused. So far what we understood: what is the data center, what is basically the instance, what is the provisioning, what is an environment, right? Maybe I have bombarded with a lot of terminology today, but this is what it is, right? So I understood the concept of instance, and also we understood the concept of a client. What is a client also? Okay. So I will make it as a in color one. I'll make it a classic color. Yeah. So now with this understanding of this terminology, we'll move on. So now there is a concept again in the LMS. People who have worked in any kind of a pharmaceutical industries and all, we have another concept there. We have something called validated learning. So in the validated learning, it comes with a fourth pre-production instance that is only unique for LMS. Okay, so you'll be having a third stage instance and fourth pre-production instance. Okay, it is a separate release schedule, and it is actually comes fourth quarter, I think. Yeah. Similarly, for recruiting, marketing, and recruiting posting are limited to one tenant in the productive environment for technical reasons. So that also you have to be very careful. So now coming to the validated learning, it is not an automatic provisioning. So you have to raise a Jira ticket. That is very unique. Again, I will not discuss it now. Whenever we'll be going for a LMS session, we'll be covering that. So now ECP, people who are an AC payroll consultant, be careful. ECP comes with the two non-production instances for ECP and allow multiple clients to be created for it. Okay. So you have to understand this as well. So your development instance can have two clients, your test instance can have three clients, and there will be one production instance. These three things actually you have to remember when it comes to the EC payroll, right? EC payroll move to non-production instance for ECP, and it allows multiple clients. Development instance can have two clients, but your test instance can have three clients. One is a production instance. Okay. So this is something very unique for ECP from an instance strategy point of view. This is what we have discussed. It's a general one, but for LMS, as I say, LMS, when I say LMS, it's a validated one. Validated LMS will be having a different one, different strategy. And your next one we have discussed, that is your, I'll put it in a general category so that it will not be getting confused. So the general category, this one, I will move it here, cut, paste. And in the validated LMS, as we have said, that we do have basically third stage instance and a fourth pre-production instance. Different schedule. It is the third stage instance. And fourth one is a pre-production. Fourth pre-production instance does have, because a lot of validation required from a content point of view there. Pre-prod. Right. So this is something very unique to validated LMS. Similarly, we do have a different strategy for your CX, RX, the formerly known as the recruiter, means RCM, that is your recruiter experience, candidate experience, the recruiting marketing. These two modules also requires a different strategy. And for this, we do have, for technical reasons, SAP says that RC, basically recruiting marketing and recruiting posting, they do not talk about the RCMP, so I'll just remove it. RX, not RX, basically RP, recruiting posting. Okay. So they do follow actually one tenant in the production environment for the technical reason. Okay. One tenant in production. So now coming to the ECP, as we say, from an ECP point of view, or EC payroll point of view, if you think about it. From an ECP point of view, we do have two non-production instances as usual. Two non-production instances. Then we do have it allows multiple clients and dev, test, and production. Yeah. We have a dev, QA, production. So again, inside the dev, it can have two clients. And your QA, your test instance can have three clients. Can have, I'm saying. You can have three clients, and typically your production instance is production instance. Right? This is something we have to understand, right? So now coming to the naming convention, actually, this is again you have to follow. It is easy to follow the structure and all. And here you'll find one term here before you go there. GA release, that is a generally available release in the production environment. So I say 4 weeks before your production release, it will be released in your test environment. Okay. So naming a convention, you can always follow like instance name, that is the D and T, which are named as such in line with the overall S/4HANA cloud. Okay. So you can define them. So again, naming convention you have to follow as per this. Naming instance definition is notional, so and should be optional. So it will be very easy for you when you should define them as per the recommendations. Okay. Instance name, that is D and T, are named as such in line with the overall S/4HANA cloud. So terminology do not define your instance strategy landscape. What they are saying historically, when EC was not in picture, only 2 instances were provided for the customers. Okay. Before actually historical, when it was not only the dev and their test is for preview and used for development testing, same environment, prod is for productive environment. When EC was in scope, a third development environment is provided to the customer. Dev is again, that's the productive environment. Test is for typically preview and used for both development testing. productive environment. Okay. Again, you have to don't get confused so much. Ideally, we follow two-step strategy, but yeah, SAP provides this kind of documentation as well. And for more details, you can also follow your IDP documents. Okay, for this instance strategy, we have we have a specific IDP document for this as well. In your implementation design principles document, and this IDP, whenever we'll be talking about the IDP sessions, so we'll be covering there in details. So what are the key points? What are the key highlights of this IDP guide? We will be discussing there. We'll be having some brainstorming there. Okay, how this IDP will be different from your typically ALP. So ALP is a high-level document. Again, in the IDP, we'll be finding very details about it. Like suppose we talked about a data center, right? So this document doesn't say this is the data center available, right? And also there will be a reference point to any KVA. So what are the best practices? What are the URLs? What's the production? What's the test environment? So very more details about it you'll be finding here. So whatever I've explained today, that details you will be finding the naming convention. How do you name those clients? What should be your okay? So very much detailed. Generally, I see people generally skip it. But if you're a new consultant or a new to SAP SuccessFactors and all, I generally recommend people before jumping to the implementation guides and all. This documentation is very easy to read, and compared to implementation guide, you must follow this and understand, think, visualize all the things before we go for any implementations or any certification or interviews as well, right? So to understand, these are very handy documents, and SAP made our life easier by producing these documentations with all the implementation partner with the help from them. But this documentation definitely I will recommend, right? So this is a IDP document, which is a link to this ALP document as we talk in the episode number 2 today, right? So I'm not going details about it. Now coming to this, so why we matters, right? So managing multiple instances, why it is from a maintenance point of view, you have to think about it, right? So you have to think why we need whether we need a 2 instance, 3 instance, or multiple instances we need it depending upon our requirement. So whenever you are already having some implementations project is going on, if you want to optimize your current strategy, but at the same time you want to do some POCs, you cannot run it in the live environment, all those, right? So you maybe require a different instance where you can copy your pre-production instance and you can do some POC, proof of concept, to run, okay, before you go for typical implementations, right? So you have to optimize it. Whenever you are optimizing any kind of existing strategy, or you are having some new initiatives in your organization solution without impacting your current instance and all, then we need it, right? That is something when to work on it. What are the results? Basically, so you have to again train or educate people once you are having such kind of a scenario. You have to tell people that which instance to be used for a project point of view, which are from a training or maintenance point of view. Suppose you were working in a bigger team in a shared service kind of environment or a onshore offshore model, then you have to definitely prepare your team members who are working on a HR operations side of it, right? Then definitely you have to make sure people are understanding all the things in a very detailed way. Okay, so this is again why, when, and what. So it is from an evaluation point of view, regression, any kind of a regression testing if you're doing, or any kind of a new features and all that, at that point of time you have to understand. Okay, so this is something we have to again capture in our mind map, so that we'll be able to easily understand why we need it and when and what. So 3 things we have to again capture in the mind map whenever you are talking about the instance strategy. So why we need it, and basically that again we can see there why, then when, then what. So this is again from a setting the stage, or you can say after understanding the terminologies, all these things, right? So generally why we need it, generally if you are in any case scenario, there's a scenario, there can be multiple reasons, any kind of regression testing if you're doing, right, you may need it. Okay, so you cannot do it everything in the production directly, right? You need a separate instance, right? So this is one of the reasons I can understand and manage multiple streams that maintain, implement, and success factor from a evaluation point of view, and you're managing multiple streams of that. Then when to work it, actually discuss instance strategy generally before the implementation start, right? Integration, why it is happening, then evaluation purpose. Evaluation, as I say, any kind of a POC or initiative we are taking, POC or any kind of initiatives in your organizations, you are taking it up. Generally, we require in those period of time, initiative. Then coming to the next one is when to do it. Generally, before implementation or before taking any kind of initiative, implementation, or before execute any strategy. So generally we do that. And what to do that? So basically, so you have to also inform the people. So basically here we say before any strategy, before optimizing any strategy, I can say. What we have to do? So basically, educate, train, engage, those kind of stuff. You have to educate people, educate, train, basically all the stakeholders, right? They have to understand what is happening in what environment or instance and all, right? So this is a very comprehensive one, nothing much to understand the difficulties. And this is how typical diagram looks like, and it is a recommended landscape architecture if you are not having employee central in place, right? So I'll just make a zoom of it. It is a recommended landscape with if you're not having EC, right? So there are two things, like one in the right hand side, you can see this is a production, and left hand side, you can see your preview data center. And you can see this is a non-production instance in preview, and this is a production instance in a productive environment, okay, which is already go live. And you can see, and so anything new here, just let's see, use this environment for preview, validation, possibly connect to third-party applications, it can be connected. Then we do have any kind of production support, data can be loaded in the refresh from a production, may require data scrambling and masking, right? So in the preview instance, what are the things you can do? So they have mentioned here, peak close latency in the project timelines and release dates overlapping. Okay, so any kind of a timeline overlapping. Okay, so during that blackout period, generally the 1 month period when there is actually because it should be in the same stage. Otherwise, if it's a preview, suppose generally happens what happens in your 1H or 2H releases, during the release time, preview instance goes little bit one level next level, and production instance level one level low, because after testing it is done and everything, that 1 month release cycle only in the production instance you will be able to see that, right? For that reason, you have to be very much clear about your project timeline and release date if there's overlapping and even during reevaluations and all, and you have to understand this very carefully. Whether you are going a refresh activity or a configuring a copy path and all. So this is again what to consider, right? So now coming to this is generally we do have whenever you are having employee central instance. Okay, so typically project implementation, you can see which is what already talked about, right? Non-production instance in a preview environment. Another scenario we had was non-production instance in a productive environment, which is a kind of a pre-production also people call it, right? So I will just make a highlight of it. Non-production instance in the productive environment. Similarly, the production instance. These are the three things which you just spoke about, right, in the mind map also. And whenever you are doing a refresh activity, basically we can do have a like all the things happening, coming your configuration data and everything is coming here at all. Now you can see the preview dev instance and the production instance and QA test instance. There are three instances you can see here. So the preview dev, okay, that means non-production in a preview environment. You do all kind of development, unit testing, okay, and for any kind of a release validation, preview release validation, it will happen there. And it can be also connected to any third-party application. Suppose if you want to test it, right, any third-party application, non-SAP applications, whatever you are going to use. And once it is approved, you can move it to the preview to quality assurance, and that it can be also data can be loaded and refreshed from the production as well. You can do that. So you can see there is a blue tick, blue arrow. You can also refresh on a regular basis. Means we'll product from the production environment. You can have a refresh to your preview environment or your productive, your pre-production environment. Both it can be done. So this is a typical refresh activity. So I have a question for all of you. So you have to tell me, suppose I want to only move the data. I have another scenario where I have to also move data as well as the configurations. Okay. So there are two different terminologies. Okay. So you have to tell me in the chat, or if you're watching the YouTube live, you have to put in the comment section. Okay. What is the key difference between these two? It's the common interview questions you'll be asked, even whenever you're talking to a IT stakeholders in the client company. Okay, you'll be coming across those two terminologies. Okay. What other terminologies are there? And you have to just clear. Okay. So I'll be reading your comments if you're watching in the YouTube. And also, if you're watching in my platform, I will pick out one or two the top entries, and also we'll be having some gifts for that. Right. Okay. Now, as I say, it can be used for testing and production, any kind of issues and all, solving that. Production instance is all the live data, and it can be always also always connected. If you are using any kind of third-party application, nothing much. Okay. And QA instance, again, very similar. So your configurations are to be migrated from preview based on your approval. And you can also, it can be used. It is very important for typically if you are implementing EC payroll, right? And for any kind of payroll, parallel testing will happen here. Okay, because in a non-production instance in the preview environment, it may not have your payroll data, because payroll is such a sensitive data. We should not keep it here. Generally, to be having a dedicated production instance, means pre-production instance basically, and where you will be capturing all those near real-time data, and you can test all those things. And all kind of integration testing, all kind of UAT and everything will be done here. Okay, and that is the application. There is nothing much. So the diagram is hope self-explanatory, and if you have any question, you can always ask it. The next one is a BAU. So in this kind of a scenario, business as usual with the employee central scenario, what you have to do. So in this scenario, what you have to do, you will be again having, suppose you are taking some kind of initiatives and all, right? So you will be having this kind of a scenario where a non-productive instance in the preview environment, then we will be having productive instance in the productive environment, similar to that previous one, non-productive instance in the productive environment, similar kind of structure. But here the difference is, you can see, if you're opting any kind of announcement or any kind of new configuration, if you are doing, then those regression testing for it will happen here in the preview dev instance. Unit testing can happen here, and in the production instance, all the live data will be maintained there and all. So this will be kind of a refresh activities. Again, you have to follow this system, right? So this is a scenario where you have a business as usual if you are having a scenario with the employee central activity in the module, right? So all kind of, again, integration testing, any kind of new development, parallel testing, production support, it will happen here. And this is just for a recommended architecture, landscape architecture. And if you are not having without means strategy considerations, again, that is not very, I have not seen much expressed in my projects. EC is mostly in my projects I had. Okay, without employee central also, they offer this kind of a solution where the core EP modules, your employee profile will be implemented and all. Okay, but this is a different strategy. So you will be having, okay, so this is I will just homework for you, just go for it, read for it, including leading practices. If you're having EC, okay, again, 2-3 instance strategy, they are talking about development, quality, and production here. This is from a payroll point of view, as we've already discussed. You will be having a 2 instance, basically 2 environment here. One will be a pre-production for parallel testing project, and another one is for your UAT and SIT. If you're implementing EC payroll, okay, that will be a scenario. There will be point-to-point applications, all country move as we speak, right? It is as of 2023 January, but it is subject to change again, the disclaimer, right? So why we need a typically instant strategy, right? So again, this is more details you will be finding in the IDB document, okay? Okay, so why this is required? Because S/4HANA, SuccessFactors, and other cloud solutions are on a different release schedule. Okay, SuccessFactors doesn't have a transport system, just like an S/4HANA. You have to understand, there are instance management tools available for selective move to configurations from preview to QA and preview to production. So any kind of new instance, as we say, 4 weeks time frame, and universal preview give time only ready for change management communication strategies, only for the thing. And payroll data cannot be stored. That is why actually, as for the DPP protocols, we cannot use it, and data privacy and all those stuff. and cannot be used also for the payroll part. For that reason, we need a different instance, right? And all kind of any kind of integration testing or a payroll testing, generally what we do, it happens in a QA and production stack. And provisioning always team start from a standard two-tier landscape to testing production when EC is in scope in third instance is requested in provision, which is then many times incorrectly ending up development instance in the production stack. This is an issue we also recognize and have been fighting for the correct for many years. This is also SAP is a struggle, their own struggle. So I will recommend to go for it. I'm not going to read out all the things. Let's say why it is needed. They are explaining this. Additional instance, what are the scenarios we will be using? It can be training, it can be secondary testing, any kind of a initiative we are taking it up that they have covered. And also there are some pros and cons, like anything, any technology. There are also, you have to understand what are the different caveats we do have whenever you are having a additional instance. Definitely time is a constraint, so you'll be having definitely required time, and there will be cost implications also. You have to think about it. It is not free of cost. Again, whenever you're taking more instance beyond that, so you have to take it out. Now coming to the instance sync, instance management tools, we have three management tools. One is the config center, instance sync, and instance reference. I think this is basically, if you are doing a copy of your configuration in your data, it is a reference. And if you are copying only specific configuration path from one instance to another, that will be a sync actually. Okay. So when I say reference, it will be having both your configuration and data you are copying, right? If it is sync, only configuration. So that you have to remember. So you have to, what I will do, I will put into a mind map again, just for your reference. So it will be very easy for you to, whenever you are going through this thing, okay? So let me put it into the mind map in the ALP series instance strategy. I will just put it here. Let's say the tools. Tools. In tools, I will be putting here like the three tools which we talked about now. That is the configuration center, instance sync. Configuration center, then we do have instance sync. People always get confused here. So do not get, it is also a very good interview question. What are the tools? Configuration center was not there when I started my career in SuccessFactors. It was, I think 1 year, 2 year back, it just came. Okay, instance sync, then we do have instance refresh. Okay, so you have a tool, refresh, instance refresh, easy to remember. Instance referencer is actually, it is a config plus, we move config data, also the actual data mask. Okay, but in instance sync, what we do, it is only the config part, configuration push actually, okay, from one instance to another instance. So let's say if I go for instance sync, it will be only having, you will be moving only the config details from one instance to another instance. That is an instance sync, right? So now configuration center, what does it do? So if I go here, so it is very important to remember. Okay, so what are the tools is very important, because this you will be doing, and also there are some quota. So that will be discussing some other days, right? So here I will just putting it in a color so that you will remember easily. So this will be your tools. Let's try to the children. Then, so we have configuration center, instance sync, and instance refresh. Instance sync is for only config data movement. Instance refresh, config plus data. Refresh, remember config plus data, right? And configuration center, actually you can also download, view any kind of a transport kind of stuff. Okay, so it's in terms of data model or any application specific configuration. If you want to move it, you can use that tool, right? So I'm not going to typically this explain. Maybe each will be a different session. Okay, maybe in the upcoming days, it's an agile model and all that we'll be discussing later on. So this, okay. Now coming to the next part. So we'll stop here. Maybe in the we will require another session to understand the governance part of it, right? Because system governance is a very huge topic, and people who have really wanted HR governance or any IT governance projects, right? It requires a different thing. So from a system governance point of view, what are the key initiatives? How does your instance strategy fall into this picture in the governance point of view, how what kind of cadence you have to follow, all those details we have to. There's a lot of things. Okay, so we cannot cover it in a single session. So we'll be having in the next session, what we're going to cover, we'll be discussing what are the different details are there. And also there are a few things, we will be going deep dive into these tools, maybe a couple of tools also we will try to see it. And from a scenario specific, we will try. Okay, so today it was a generic session. And the next session will be the second part of this instance strategy, what I will do in the episode number 2B, I will say. Today was the episode 2A. In the episode number 2B, we will be covering the specific scenarios and what are the typical questions generally come in. And if you have any Q&A, any kind of question and answer, you can ask me any questions in that session. So with that note, I think we will just quickly summarize what we have seen and we will just refresh our mind map. So let me do a quick check. Instance seek we talked about, then we talked config copy, and instance refresh we talked about, which is nothing but your config and data copy. So this is something we have to understand. And config center, it will very specific configuration if you want to move it, so that you can utilize here in the config center, right? So So now, just to quickly summarize what we have seen, in today's episode number 2, it was all about the instance strategy. In the episode number 2A, what we have covered today's session. So we talked about what is an instance, what is the provisioning. Instance is the front end, back end is the provisioning. Couple of terminology we talked about. What is a data center? What is an environment, right? And how environment is different from your instance. What is a client, right? And from a model specific, also we have seen what other terminologies means for us. And so then next we move to our why we need an instance strategy, because mostly it is for your typically any kind of an evaluation of a product, even also any kind of a POC, if you're doing any kind of initiative you're taking in your organizations, you have to think about it. Any kind of regression testing will be having a separate instance where exactly you'll be testing all those things. And also in the BAU scenario, suppose as business as usual is some activity, some new initiative, you are taking it up. And in that scenario also, you may require all those things, right? Then when you require it, basically, mostly any kind of a strategy you are starting before optimizing any of the modules and all, you have to start. If it is already implemented, let's say you're already implemented Employee Central and Employee Central Payroll, but you're not utilizing all the functionalities, and you have to utilize those functionality. As for the new product roadmap, maybe your architects have decided and your business has also decided to go for a new initiatives and you want to test it, right? Then you will definitely require for it. And any kind of before implementations is a must. Okay, so for that reason, I recommend not only the architects, not only the project managers or product owners, also the consultants, analysts who are working in the project, they should understand this document very carefully. And it's an official document released by SAP, and you have to follow that end to end this document. Okay, so this is something in the instance strategy we have seen where it is required and what is required, and also it is very important to educate and train. Okay, because it's also always a part of your training activities and change management activities that you have to understand. You have to educate those people and which instance to be used, and also from an access point of view, also do not give all the access to everyone. So whatever the roles you are playing in the project, accordingly, you have to give those access. And towards the end, theoretically, we have seen these tools, but maybe in the upcoming days, we will be seeing exploring the details about these 3 tools: configuration center, instance sync, and instance refresh. It itself is a one-on-one session, but today I have just seen that what are the details, the understanding, the conceptual understanding of this topic. So hope although it is theoretical sessions, conceptual session, but I will recommend understand very carefully, go through this document over again and again, because these are all, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Already there are some standard documentations available. One good news, we have recently moved, SAP has moved our community. We have which actually I was aspiring for a long time. So initially what we had, from community point of view, we have multiple portals, multiple community portals, right? And my favorite was earlier in the SAP SCM days, we have this favorite community.sap.com, where we used to have all those queries, SAP SCM, payroll, all those stuff. Now SuccessFactor also, now it's come to here. But having said that, we need a user ID for this. And I would recommend to follow this communities, and you will be finding all details. What are the customer communities I have also moved. And also it requires your partner communities also moved here actually, but again, it will be protected, means everybody will not be getting access based on your accessibility. You will be able to, means user IDs and your access, your role you are playing and all, you will be finding all those. But it is very good initiatives, but again, by SAP. Earlier, we had one community for partners, one community for customers, another community for general SuccessFactors, 3 communities. Now it is actually now 1, but here again, we'll be having different groups here. So they call it the groups, and topics is divided. I will recommend to, if you have not explored it soon. It has just recently they have moved it, and you will be finding a lot of things. You'll be finding many details, all the latest trends, all the recent webinars. Customer this recently only migrated for the I think 7th or 8th of January this year, but it's very good initiative, very good move. And I will recommend go through all this things, and you keep on asking questions, also contribute as a community member, whatever you're learning. And yeah, so that's all for now. Thank you very much. Hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you very much for joining in. See you tomorrow in the next episode 2A. We will be again continuing with the business strategy and with some more practical tips and tricks. Okay. Thank you very much for joining in. We'll stop.